Okay, drillers, rise and shine, and don't forget your booties because it's cold outside. Of course, it's cold outside. It's February 4th. Welcome to episode 95 of the Driller Newscast, a weekly update on the news and stories impacting the drilling and water industry. And I'll tell you what, I often feel like Phil Connors, Bill Murray's character in Groundhogs Day, because the same hot button topics continue to make full circle and make the news and impact our day-to-day business and the future of our industry. So with that said, this week at the news, we're going to head back to Idaho, where there's been another Clean Water Act violation that's being enforced by the EPA. Next, we're going to jump into the amazing study released by the Journal of Nature on the impact of groundwater and climate change. And this is the first study of its kind in 21st century. It's over the last 50 years, 40 countries involved, and 6 of our states made the top of the list as being impacted. I bet you can guess those. And for our feature this week, we're going to talk groundhogs, ghosts, geothermal, groundwater, climate change, and how we as drillers need to be doing our part as drilling professionals, groundwater professionals, construction professionals, and helping fight climate change and save our planet. But before we get into all this great news, let's talk some safety. Last week in safety, we talked about how cold it is. This week, let's talk about it getting hot because it's National Burn Awareness Week, which is observed the first full week in February. This is an opportunity for drilling companies, construction companies, other organizations to mobilize together to discuss burns, fires, and life safety as we need to unite and share a common burn awareness and prevention message. The 2024 Burn Awareness Week dates are February 4th through 10th. So it's Monday morning, February 4th. Sit down with our teams and talk about hot work. Let's talk about our job safety analysis. Let's talk about burns from last year. Let's talk about injuries, and let's reflect on that, because here's the statistics. In the United States, more than 400,000 people receive medical care for treatment of burn injuries every year. And the majority of these injuries are preventable. That's right. We've learned unsafe acts are 80% of all of our injuries versus unsafe conditions. Sure, we have hot work permits and we have lockout, tagout, we have all the proper procedures, but we need to make sure we have the right tools, the right PPE, and we're thinking about this. I know as I worked in the Southeast, there was an incident with a young man fueling a gasoline pumper and it flashed on him. The unit was hot. He ended up having to have cadaver skin on his hand and arm for 6 weeks, along with a long road of rehabilitation, and it was fully preventable. Unsafe acts. So we need to think about that. And I know we have dual fuel on many jobs. All of our heavy equipment's diesel, and all of our small generators and pumpers are gas. And we do that because it's really hard to pull start a diesel engine. And I did that with a Bay Road equipment line. I probably have a repetitive stress injury from it. So let's be smart and think about how we prevent those situations and how we can be a smarter drilling community. Finally, this week, I need to let you all in on this great meeting that's going to be happening with the U.S. Department of Labor, OSHA, who has scheduled a meeting of the Advisory Committee on Construction Safety and Health for Thursday, February 22nd. It's from 9 to 4 p.m. The meeting will include remarks from the Assistant Secretary for Occupational Health and Safety, Doug Parker. Great man. He cares about the construction industry. He's always looking out for us, and he's going to be having a statement. You can go to this meeting in person or attend online, and we always talk about we need to be more involved. We need to know why these rules are written. Here's your chance to participate. So he will have a discussion of OSHA's Directorate of Construction. Next, there'll be discussion on women in construction, reports from committee groups, and a period during which the public is invited to make comments. you're going to attend and want to make comments, you have to have those submitted by February 15th. I challenge you to go to OSHA.gov right now, check out this meeting, find out how you get signed up to do it online or in person, and let's partake and be smart about how we as drilling professionals, construction professionals can be more proactive with OSHA. Go out, be safe. For this week in the news, we're heading back to Idaho for a Clean Water Act violation into the waters of the United States. This was the Coeur d'Alene River in Pinehurst, Idaho. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency announced last week that Michael Galliano agreed to pay a penalty of $8,000 for violating the Clean Water Act when he discharged fill material into the South Fork of the Coeur d'Alene River at his property in Pinehurst, Idaho. Talked about the waters of the United States and Idaho and Sackett versus EPA. This is right in the heart of it. It goes on to state, beginning in September 2022, he discharged large rocks below the ordinary high water mark of the South Fork of the Coeur d'Alene River without a Clean Water Act permit. The unauthorized discharge occurred within the Bunker Hill Superfund site. As a result, these discharges likely mobilized highly contaminated sediments and mine tailings frequently found throughout the site. This type of mobilization of sediment is often sped up by high flow events following heavy rains or snowmelt. Statement from the EPA. Property owners must get necessary Clean Water Act permits to make sure that any work impacting waters of the United States is done in a way that protects the health of the ecosystem and minimizes the impact of sources of drinking water and water used for recreation. This came from EPA Region 10 Office of Enforcement and Compliance Assurance Director Ed Kowalski. He continues, these type of Clean Water Act enforcement actions are important in protecting our valuable water resources and are especially important in areas within Superfund sites with highly contaminated sediments. The importance of protecting our waters of the United States is significant. Couldn't agree more. And we've seen this from the discussion and debate in court cases that are over a decade fight of the Sackett versus the EPA. That resulted in the Supreme Court ruling that has continued to question the EPA's authority and ability to enforce impacts of the waters of the United States. We have to think about how this impacts the life cycle of water and back into groundwater. We can see in the recent study published January 24th in the Journal of Nature more significant impacts, and that's what we're going to switch gears to. This study is the first of its kind for the 21st century, and it evaluates all the water and extreme weather impacts from climate change to groundwater. Study paints a scary picture, one as groundwater professionals we knew is happening, from the fights over the Colorado River Compact to the demands of the Department of Interior requiring those states to create a plan to reduce 3 to 4 million acre-feet of water. And then on to our tribal nations who have sued the United States and states that they are within for their sovereign right to groundwater that should be given to them, which is ridiculous because it's their water. They shouldn't be asking. It's their sovereignty. So the Journal of Nature study titled Rapid Groundwater Decline and, in some cases, of recovery and aquifers, it globally assessed 40 countries and the in situ groundwater level trends of 170,000 monitoring wells that paint a picture of 16,193 aquifers, making up 75% of the global groundwater withdrawals. In the study, it evaluated from 1980 to 2022 all that has happened with groundwater withdrawal. And 6 of our states ranked for being in the high impact of groundwater withdrawal. It's pretty easy to think about what states we're going to talk about. Let's go with the largest House seats in the country, California, and the San Joaquin Valley, and the importance of its need for water, but again, the impact of the Colorado River. Next, they mentioned Texas, and again, the fact that the Colorado River Compact has allotments of water that Colorado is supposed to release down to New Mexico and Texas, and eventually 1.5 million acre feet that is supposed to go to the country of Mexico. This is all very interconnected, and I implore you to go to nature.com and check out this study. We've talked about this on multiple newscasts, and the data shows that 82% of Texas's aquifers are impacted. Next, what state do you think? Arizona, right? And there's plenty of things that we can talk about with Arizona, including their collaboration to reduce 3 million acre feet of water, along with Nevada and California, which was requested by the Department of Interior. We can see that the amount of withdrawal happening in Arizona just continues to intensify with population, and just not the amount of snowpack that we expected to come out. One that surprised me was Idaho, and that it has one of the fastest collapsing aquifers in the world, with the Mill Creek Aquifer losing 2.17 meters a year. Next, Utah. And we can see with the environmental incidents and the discussions that's happening with as the Great Salt Lake is drying up, the debris that will be blown, that there is some massive impacts depleting Utah's water, which is a share of the Colorado Compact. And you know what drives me nuts with this discussion is we see that Utah is one of the biggest states that consumes a ton of groundwater, though they're depleting so quickly, and there's not enough reclamation, not enough reuse, or just responsibility. 82% of Utah's aquifers are in decline. So go check out this Journal of Nature study. It has over 13,173 references and acknowledgments. And it goes on to state further acknowledgments. We greatly acknowledge the contributions from individuals and dozens of organizations who are responsible for the generation of the primary data used in this study. The material is based on work supported by the National Science Foundation. Also, the United States Geological Survey was involved. California Institute for Water Resources, Rutgers University, University of California, Santa Barbara, Switzerland was involved. Saudi Arabia was involved. 40 countries around the world contributed to this study. And we need to cheers all these individuals that contributed all of this data and say, thank you for bringing this all together for us. And there were 3 equal authors put their heart and soul into this. Scott Jaceko, Hans-Jörg Seaboard, and Deborah Peroni. Thank you. Go check this out. We'll continue to dive deeper into this. This is a great discussion, and something as we see with satellites and the more data and AI, water withdrawal is just going to get bigger and bigger. And that's why we're going to now jump into groundhogs and climate change and geothermal and groundwater, and what are we doing for our part. This week's feature. Did he really see a shadow? Will it be 6 more weeks of winter? Although I feel like we've had 2 really hard weeks and not much of a winter at all. When I was in the third grade, I told Mrs. Barton that it's impossible that leap year is going to turn out to be anything good. I was convincing the class that by 4th of July, by the time I'm 40, it would be cold and Christmas would be warm. It's 52 degrees on Christmas Eve. Taking off the suit, rolling up the sleeves, because drillers, we got to embrace the science, the physics, and use our capabilities to help fight global water crisis, climate change, reduce greenhouse gases. This is what the real science says right now. According to the Met Office, the UK National Weather Service at Exeter, they do a lot of great content and they help influence our weather data across the world. There's a good chance the global average surface temperature this year will pass 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. We've talked a lot about this. They do believe this isn't yet permanent, but it's going to be a hot summer. It's ironic to think how much we focus on superstition weather versus true data. We talk a lot about Groundhogs Day, the almanac, and there is validity there, you know, in our most famous groundhog, Punxsutawney Phil. I opened the newscast with one of my favorite lines. The DJs from the great movie written by Danny Rubin and Harold Ramis, directed by Harold Ramis, starring Bill Murray, Groundhog's Day. If you're a fan of the newscast, you know that I'm a huge fan of Harold Ramis. And as a writer and director, we quoted Ghostbusters in the Halloween edition. Don't cross the polyacrylamides. You know, Harold Ramis was also Egon as he co-wrote that movie. It's wild, right? Drilling industry, we're predominantly field taught, learned, trained, tribal experience of lessons of success and failure. And it's hard to prove our value or what we should be doing as groundwater professionals and drilling professionals. It's not unlike the groundhog or seeing ghosts or that blink instinct of deja vu. And it's important we harness those and we use our gut. That's what's made us the great companies we are today. But it's just as important of the science and physics behind our drilling. The same as Groundhog's Day is rooted in some pretty common sense science, because it's exactly in between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. Maybe I have a little bit of love for this holiday because Brock in French means badger. And initially in the European folklore, it was badgers who were the tribal weathermen. And there's that piece of it. But just like making water and resources come out of the ground is so rewarding, and I've said many times, it's as close to something spiritual we're capable of doing. Groundhog's Day comes from a spiritual holiday of Candlemas. And I learned about this as a child. My grandfather was a huge fan of Groundhog's Day. And the quote went, "If the Candlemas be fair and bright, winter has another fight. If the Candlemas bring clouds and rain, winter not come again." So regardless of your thoughts on Groundhog's Day or ghosts, the same as, are we going to call it climate change and that our planet's in trouble, or just extreme weather? There's science behind it. And we in the drilling industry have the power to help offset the global epidemic that is climate change and help fight the global water crisis. You can go back. I talk about this plenty in the newscast, from our discussions with coring in Greenland to the ice sheets to the impact of climate change, to the global water crisis, to COP27 and 28, to the importance of us installing ground source geothermal to help offset the impact that heating and cooling has on the electric grid, which is 2/3 of our energy consumption goes into heating and cooling buildings. And we have a very antiquated electric grid. So we have many opportunities, and I'm going to start with geothermal because we need professionals to drill boreholes for hot rock geothermal and ground source geothermal and boreholes for aquifer storage and recharge wells and more water wells in general. And we see great initiatives like in Georgia, where if you have an acre of land, you can now have your own private water well. And as we look at the cost of PFAS and we look at the cost of the damage we're doing to our planet, the greenhouse gases, and getting off the electric grid, there's a lot that can be done here. So in January, I spent a lot of time discussing a driller's role in improving our 21st century civilization. And I want you to think about that. I talk about all the time our value and worth of progressing civilization. Without water wells, civilization doesn't get far from bodies of water. Without the rare earth minerals that we were able to extract, to geotechnical investigation, to environmental, drilling is the heart of humanity. And this wasn't any more evident than this month as I attended Decarb New York event hosted by the Companies for Net Zero. I'll be talking a lot more about this next week and the weeks to come as we have Decarb DC happening and the Decarb Boston. It's great people coming together and talking about the entire life cycle, including the funding and the feasibility. But tell you what, it's a big question on, are we capable of scaling up? Can we get out of our own way and utilize the right geothermal drilling or technology in the right place, opposed to a one-size-fits-all? I'll get into that in episode 96. Just a week and a half ago, I was at the AHR conference that had 50,000 attendees. And we talked about heat pumps, but more importantly, we talked about ground source heat pumps and the importance of utilizing loops and wastewater and whatnot. This was a huge discussion. We talked drilling with 50,000 heating and cooling experts and professionals. And again, the big question is the role that a driller has in contributing to this. The Department of Energy has questioned, can we ramp up? Can we build enough drill rigs? Can we train enough drillers? So here's my challenge. What does that look like for your drilling company? What does it look like for this industry? And I know I can hear you right now, Brock, I'm busy drilling more water wells than I ever have. Or I'm hearing the other side of it. Brock, we don't need these goofy water well drillers getting in and screwing up the ground source heat pump drilling industry. We need direct professionals that are nothing but geothermal drillers. It's not how this works. We need everybody. This silliness of, oh, I've developed my own geothermal drilling rig and it's only for geothermal. The best tool for the job is the most readily available tool. And obviously, if that tool is honing in on one discipline to do it better than anything else, that is great. But the science and physics and the tooling and the fundamentals tell me it's just about time, safety, and execution on what piece of equipment you use. Beyond that, I hear, Brock, I need a sophisticated 21st century drilling company that's capable of drilling deep, complex wells that can either stimulate a hot rock zone or harness what the high temperature, high pressure that is going to be coming out of the ground with blowout preventers, having the right standard operating procedures, the drilling program in place, the safety in place. And I see it out there. There's great companies We need to be thinking about that. We need to know how we're going to be involved and how we're going to take our drilling business and talk our capabilities and represent the fact that maybe we don't have that PE or PG next to our name, but that $2 to $4 to $6 million worth of equipment and the staff we have and the processes we've put in place, that we are true drilling professionals and not shade tree mechanics. And it's going to take us being successful, understanding how to mitigate that risk, how to stay on time, how to not just blanket change order projects. There's so much that we have to step up and do, because the alternative I've heard in the room, every room in the last 6 months, is how do we limit the amount of drilling required? How do we eliminate drilling altogether? How do we construct where wastewater is used or loops are used in an alternative way? We talk a lot about geothermal right now because of the Inflation Reduction Act, the opportunity to train drillers. State of New York, 100 million bore feet of drilling. We see Chicago talking about 65 miles of loop a year for 30 years. And we see Colorado and Massachusetts and Maryland and Vermont and Maine, Connecticut, the Carolinas, California, all jumping on board, wanting ground source geothermal and drilling. And let's think about this. Okay, I don't want to dedicate my piece of equipment to one job site for 4 months. Last week, I was at the Minnesota Water Well Association, and I taught safety along with discussing some leadership and drilling. There were great topics. And as I ended, I ran into Brad Meyer, Director of North American Sales for Johnson Screens. And I said, I'm driving back to Minneapolis. Can I come over and crash and check out the facility? 120 years old, Groundwater and Wells book, so much history. When was the next time I was going to be so close? And he said, come on, buddy. I got a lot to show you. And we went on a tour, got to see some great things. But one of the best possibilities of this was in the lower floor of this amazing manufacturing facility that's on a lake with all this wildlife running around. It was cool. The experience was the Darcy Group. And all right, water well drillers, you don't want to drill a ton of loops? How about the opportunity with that heat exchanger or the alternatives? Because the plan here is we have to be able to use all holistic approaches to geothermal and harnessing the earth as a battery. And it's going to take good, qualified groundwater professionals to use that system, to use a standing column system, to look at, pump and dump systems. I say go check out what the Darcy folks are doing, along with the alternatives that we have. Beyond that, as we're doing our part, we got amazing opportunities for more aquifer storage and recharge wells. We see the NGWA talking about this. So many opportunities for us to step into the 21st century and use everything that we know as our professionalism and our tribal trained experience that makes us the best qualified individuals to drill in our areas, to get involved in more sophisticated, longer lasting water well systems, recharge systems, ground source geothermal systems. The time's now. It's the climax of the movie. And it's easier to train drillers to be astronauts than it is to train astronauts to be drillers. What are you going to do? Are you going to step up and save the planet? Or are you going to stay just drilling water wells? There's nothing wrong with that. And it's some great pieces to that. But next generation stepping in, Gen Z that's just stepping in, the opportunity right now is infinite. And I tell you, get involved with the National Groundwater Association. Get involved with the International Ground Source Heat Pump Association. Get involved with your water well associations and your state geothermal associations with all the state funding and the opportunities. It is here now. And I don't want it to be February 2nd, 2025, Groundhogs Day again, and us going, we just don't have the staff. We don't have the sophistication. They don't believe that we can drill it in a efficient, safe amount of time at a reasonable price. And we can prove them wrong. And I know that right here in my heart, my sleeves rolled up. Let's get muddy and show this industry exactly why we are the great 14 to 19,000 professionals we are of the 161 million people working every day in this country. We're a small industry, but we're damn important, and it's time to start acting that way. What are you going to do? Well, it's cold outside, drillers, right? I hope I just dumped a bucket of ice on you with the discussion we just had. And sure, it went a whole gambit of directions, but we have the opportunity right now on February 4th to make a bigger commitment and execute. And that's being part of your local groundwater associations and your geothermal associations, being part of NGWA, being part of IGSPA, looking at New York Geo, looking at Illinois Geothermal Alliance, the Michigan Geothermal Association. There's so many places. There's so many people doing good. Getting involved with Geo Exchange that's in DC, fighting the good fight for us, advocating, thinking about the groundwater fly-in. These are all the pieces. Go to thedriller.com, check out what we got going on. I'm going to be there. I've just spent the last month on the road while the Yorty Wolves were at home. And the great publisher of The Driller was fending off the wolves and helping take The Driller into 2024 and beyond with all of these great stories and our contributing writers and our staff. Please like and subscribe, share this. This is our call to action. Go out, be safe. Have a great February.